A susu, which the administrators insist is an entirely legitimate investment opportunity called drugs susu.
You want to be there because the lime and the action is there. The COVID is there too.
Better clench up, buttercup. This is going to be a rough ride. Hey, how do? Welcome once again to another webisode of Wha Yuh Go Do, described by critics as a piquant perspective on national goings-on that keeps you on the edge of your toilet seat, like a slow-acting but smooth laxative. It's been a minute, hasn't it? That's the thing about life on this island. We are as far from laid-back island life as you can get. I mean, we aren't very productive, but we're very busy. Does that make sense? Just when you think you're finished chewing and swallowing down one scandal, you're being force-fed another piece of bacchanal. It can be exciting, but it can at times be more depressing than Christmas music in October. Public servants taking advantage of COVID-19 to work even less than is normal for them. A susu, which the administrators insist is an entirely legitimate investment opportunity called drugs susu. And masks for everyone, as those who can't hear feel the enforcement in law of mask wearing. So where to start? Well, the budget has been read and lots of people seem pleasantly surprised. In the same way you're pleasantly surprised that you don't die from eating that piece of chicken that fell on the floor. It's weird because I was wondering why the business chambers and all the people reporters pick up the phone and call for opinions on the budget seemed far less disturbed than usual by the contents of this document. Even one newspaper published a front-page headline along the lines of, "Not too bad. People were giving the government a good grade for the budget." A lot like the grade they gave the government for getting COVID-19 under control, way back when that never actually happened. So why were people seemingly encouraged by the tone of the budget? Well, here's one possible explanation. And by one possible explanation, I mean the only explanation worthy of consideration. In the run-up to the budget presentation, there was an ominous foreshadowing of what we could expect in this fiscal document. In no uncertain terms, the Prime Minister was saying, "Better clench up, buttercup. This is going to be a rough ride." Dr. Rowley, before the budget was presented, spoke about the country's debt position as being perilous. In fact, his perspective hinted that the budget would be heavily skewed towards catching up on public debt. Newspaper headlines suggested the threat of more taxes. And just in case you didn't believe it, those headlines were superimposed over Kolmimbert, who in the pantheon of gods, god of war, god of thunder, and so on, Imbert is the god of taxation. I swear, if he could tax our air consumption, he would. They're probably trying to work that out right now. We will have to take air in short sips. Anyway, the point is, people were bracing for the absolute worst in the budget presentation. Instead, we got less than terrible, so that automatically got upgraded to good. From my reading of it, the budget was a study in artful ambiguities. It's like one economist said, it looks great on paper, but in practice, well, that's another thing altogether. We all know in Trinidad and Tobago, the difference between what we say and what we do is a fistful of roses and a tanker of poo. What was funny in all of this budget talk is the stubborn narrative suggesting that COVID-19 derailed an otherwise resurgent economy. If you think back to previous budget presentations by the Minister of Contempt, Kolmimbert, the economy was turning around and around and around and around. The facts, and we're not talking alternative facts here, the facts are this country has been in the grip of deficit financing for 10 years or more. We've been borrowing and borrowing, then borrowing to pay the interest on borrowings. Now we've drawn down considerably on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, part of which was meant to provide transition capital for future generations who will not have the benefit of the oil and gas that we're just about sucking dry at the moment. Check this. We are actually borrowing from the future to pay for the present, which is actually our past because we haven't changed our economic model much since independence or the preceding plantation economy, so our past seems destined to become our future. Time travel! To pin all that economic mismanagement, which all governments had a hand in on COVID-19, is just garbage. TNT was on the ropes before coronavirus came on the scene. It certainly didn't help, but it sure as hell didn't make us the one-note economy that we mostly are today. By the way, a fair bit of the money the country borrows is funneled into maintaining public service salaries, and public sector workers are taking the COVID-19 restrictions hella seriously. Do people still say hella? I'm as old as a trilobite. I don't know what's trendy lingo anymore. Someone asked me the other day what WAP stands for, and I said, Wireless Application Protocol, dummy.
everything you got for this wet and gushy. Now from the top, make it drop. That's some wet and gushy. Now get a bucket.
Anyway, it seems there's a rotational arrangement in place to ensure there aren't too many public officers crowding government offices. Somehow I don't remember that ever being a problem. It's meant to be a 50% on, 50% off or something like that. By all indications, this was, in some government services, at least an informal arrangement. So employee X is staying at home, believing they're covered by employee Y, who's also staying at home, believing they're covered by employee X. Classic! The Prime Minister, infuriated by the revelation that many public servants were collecting salaries under false pretenses, issued instructions to managers to ensure that proper rostering is enforced immediately to get paid workers back on the job. Now they're talking about proper rostering. Now, what the government unbelievably fails to realize is that a rotation system won't really work, not with the way the public service is structured anyway. I'll give you an example. If you're transferring a vehicle from one person to another at the licensing department, this is an onerous multi-stage process involving several people. That sour fellow with a clipboard in his hand, well, he may not look it, but he is a man of tomorrow. As in, you'll have to come back tomorrow. If one person is missing in that chain of bureaucracy, the entire system groans to a stop for the day. It also seems that many services are ultra-specialized. There's only one of each specialist whose job can be performed by no one else. There's one cashier, one photographer, and one person to notice that you missed a zero on your form and you have to start the entire process over. In cases where there are two specialists, one is always on lunch, no matter what time it is, until it's quitting time. There is, of course, an easy fix for this problem. The government knows this. Transfer the majority of government services online. Do an audit of jobs in the public service that can be automated and put them on the internet. That way, many public servants can just stay home forever, just without pay. No, seriously, those workers who are displaced by the digitization of services can be retrained to take up other jobs across the vast expanse of the public service. That way I can get my birth certificate renewed before I have to get my death certificate. The government has already shown they can send home workers en masse without too much trouble from the public. Shutting down Petrotrin was supposed to trigger a wave of resistance. They shut that place down like a store in Trinity Mall, or any of the nation's malls for that matter. But for now, we'll have to see if public service managers can get the workers to stop hiding behind COVID-19 and come to work and give the full 35 or 40% effort the public deserves. Because the coronavirus isn't going anywhere soon. I mean, look at it. My fellow Trinis had to go and, as the young people like to say, jackass the scene. Although that sounds like something time fighters would say. Consequently, the wearing of masks in public is mandated by law, with the number of positive COVID-19 cases rising like the Prime Minister's blood pressure and the number of deaths bringing up the rear, TNT is confronted with forced mask wearing in public. This, of course, shouldn't come as a surprise. It's in the very DNA of many Trinis to do what they want as opposed to what they should. Back in the heady days of freedom, when masks were worn as chin straps or exotic earrings, no one was imagining the day would come when the homeless would be ticketed for not wearing masks. Can I pay that right now? Hold on, officer. I think I have my wallet here somewhere. Oh, snap. I must have left it at home. In fact, back when the pandemic was just cracking its knuckles at the beginning of this year, the Ministry of Health and indeed the entire world was on the fence about the effectiveness of masks. Now, with the exception of some anti-maskers who are also part of the anti-life equation, it's generally accepted that masks improve your chances against COVID-19. But you know what they say, Trinis Harden? We're the kind of people who, if you tell us don't go in that room, there are 12 spitting cobras in there. Our response is, where you hear that? I'll go and check for myself. My cell phone in that room. Granted, we aren't as bad as the Americans when it comes to the subject of masks. Imagine having a gun pulled on you because you ask someone coming into your store to put on a mask. That's what many Americans are dealing with. Not in Trinidad, though. If someone pulls a gun on you here, chances are they're already wearing a mask. So you might get shot in the process of the robbery, but hey, your COVID-19 exposure will be limited, so silver linings, right? But masks it is. And I didn't think it was possible to become even more paranoid about contracting COVID-19, but as 2020 is showing us, absolutely any number could play now. Be honest, if you're in a store and someone nearby starts coughing and sputtering, tell me this exact image doesn't flash through your mind. Look, COVID-19 is going to be with us for a long time. There are some who argue that mathematically, the percentage of people who've been killed by this disease in TNT is insignificant. Most people who become infected go home, and it's many old people with sugar and pressure who are at the greatest risk, and something has to take them out anyway, right? Well, there is a 1 in 4 million chance of being eaten by a shark. But I don't know too many people who would be comfortable hanging off a piece of a door in the open ocean like Leonardo D'Onofrio. I know the interpretation of COVID-19 stats is more complicated than that, but this is satire, not Science Weekly. You don't go to McDonald's for a salad, and you don't go to the Met Office for the weather forecast. You know, just when we thought we were escaping the clutches of the coronavirus and restrictions on our happy-go-lucky way of life, restrictions that eased began to squeeze again. Now they're easing again. You can now attend funerals in numbers of 10, which is a good thing because we're probably going to have a lot more of those in our future. But what you gonna do?